Hi. I'm Juan Pujol. Today you will know my history.
Did you know that the Normandy landings during World War II were only possible thanks to the decisive role of a spy? Get ready to discover the fascinating and lesser-known story of Juan Pujol, a man whose tactical genius and unwavering dedication elevated him to the status of one of the most influential and ingenious spies in history. All this and much more you can find here, on the World Military History Channel. Juan Miguel Valentín Garcia Guayaro was born on February 14, 1912 in Barcelona, Spain. His mother was Mercedes Garcia Guayaro, who came from a very religious family. She was at her 20s when became worker at the factory of Juan Pujol Pena. Soon after his wife passed away, Juan and Mercedes began a relationship, giving birth to 4 children: Joaquin, Bonaventura, Juan and Elena. Juan had a normal childhood, where he lacked nothing. He was educated in Christian values, with great admiration for his parents, even attending a boarding school. He inherited his father's aversion to war and violence, a fact that later influenced him to act as a spy instead of enlisting voluntarily to fight as a soldier. He was a pacifist. So, Pujol decided to become a chicken farmer. In 1933, Pujol reported for compulsory military service. He was designated to the 7th Light Artillery Regiment, a cavalry unit. Pujol was obliged to learn to ride, but he did not identify with the profession and did not want to remain in the army. Soon, the Spanish Civil War began on July 17, 1936, bringing chaos and destruction to the Spanish population up to April 1, 1939. It was a difficult period for Pujol, in which he deserted, was arrested, had to hide and took a lot of difficulties. In the following year, 1940, Juan Pujol married Araceli González Carballo. At that time, he was working as a hotel manager. At the beginning of the Second World War, after developing a loathing of political extremism of all sorts during the Spanish Civil War, Pujol's humanist convictions did not allow him to turn a blind eye to the enormous suffering being caused by the Nazis. So, Pujol decided to become a spy for Britain to do something for the good of humanity. Pujol contacted the British Embassy in Madrid, which rejected his offer. Therefore, he resolved to establish himself as a German agent before approaching the British again to offer his services as a double agent. Undeterred, he created a false identity as a fanatically pro-Nazi Spanish government official and offered his services to the Germans. The German military intelligence accepted Pujol and gave him the codenames Arabelle and Alaric, a crash course in espionage, including secret writing, a bottle of invisible ink, a codebook, and £600 for initial expenses. His instructions were to move to Britain and recruit a network of British agents. He moved instead to Lisbon, capital of Portugal, and, using a tourist's guide to Britain, reference books, and magazines from the Lisbon Public Library, and newsreel reports he saw in cinemas, created seemingly credible reports that appeared to come from London. During his time in Portugal, he stayed in Estoril, at the Hotel Palacio. He claimed to be traveling around Britain and submitted his travel expenses based on fares listed in a British railway guide. During this time, he created an extensive network of fictitious subagents living in different parts of Britain. Because he had never actually visited the United Kingdom, he made several mistakes, such as claiming that his alleged contact in Glasgow would do anything for a litre of wine, unaware of Scottish drinking habits, or that the United Kingdom did not use the metric system. His reports were intercepted by the British Ultra Communications System, and seemed so credible that the British counterintelligence service MI5 launched a full-scale spy hunt operation in Glasgow and other places. One of his fictional agents reported to the Germans a convoy of 5 ships leaving Caernarfon Bay in northwest Wales. The message was intercepted by the British. As the British counterintelligence service considered that there were no more German spies in Britain, a hunt began in search of the alleged spy. New reports from the fictional spy mentioned the convoy moving south, prompting Germany to dispatch submarines and ships to ambush it. Italian planes, with torpedoes, were positioned in Sardinia. Thousands of crucial man-hours, tons of fuel and important naval assets were being sent to fight a phantom. Obviously, no convoy was found, but the Germans placed the blame on the Italians, not Arabelle. So, he again offered his services to the British, making it clear that he was already working for the Germans. Following interviews by the British military intelligence, the MI6 Iberian section, Juan Pujol was finally accepted by the Allies. His family was moved to Britain and Pujol was given the code name Garbo in reference to the famous movie star, because, according to the British, Pujol was an excellent actor. Pujol and his handler, Tomas Harris, spent the rest of the war expanding the fictitious network, communicating to the German handlers at first by letters and later by radio. Eventually, the Germans were funding a network of 27 agents, all fictitious. Together, Harris and Pujol wrote 315 letters, averaging 2,000 words, addressed to a post office box in Lisbon supplied by the Germans. His fictitious spy network was so efficient and verbose that his German handlers were overwhelmed and made no further attempts to recruit any additional spies in the United Kingdom, according to some sources. The information supplied to German intelligence was a mixture of complete fiction, genuine information of little military value, and valuable military intelligence artificially delayed. In November 1942, just before the Operation Torch landings in North Africa, Garbo's fictional agent on the River Clyde reported that a convoy of troopships and warships had left port, painted in Mediterranean camouflage. While the letter was sent by airmail and postmarked before the landings, it was deliberately delayed by British intelligence to arrive too late to be useful. Pujol received a reply stating, "We are sorry they arrived too late, but your last reports were magnificent." On occasion, he had to invent reasons why his agents had failed to report easily available information that the Germans would eventually know about. For example, he reported that his fictional Liverpool agent had fallen ill just before a major fleet movement from that port, and so was unable to report the event. To support this story, the agent eventually died and an obituary was placed in the local newspaper as further evidence to convince the Germans. The Germans were also persuaded to pay a pension to the agent's widow. Slowly, Hitler began to personally trust Arabelle's reports, assuming that all information sent by him was true. For radio communication, Arabelle needed the strongest hand encryption the Germans had. The Germans provided Arabelle with this system that, obviously, was in turn supplied to the Allied codebreakers at Bletchley Park. Arabelle's encrypted messages were to be received in Madrid, manually decrypted, and re-encrypted with an Enigma machine for retransmission to Berlin. Having both the original text and the Enigma encoded intercept of it, the Allied codebreakers had the best possible source material for a chosen plaintext attack on the Germans' Enigma key. In January 1944, the Germans told Pujol that they believed a large-scale invasion in Europe was imminent and asked to be kept informed. This invasion was Operation Overlord. However, Pujol played a leading role in Operation Fortitude, the deception campaign to conceal Overlord. He sent over 500 radio messages between January 1944 and D-Day, at times more than 20 messages per day. During planning for the Normandy beach invasion, the Allies decided that it was vitally important that the German leaders be misled into believing that the landing would happen at the Strait of Dover instead of Normandy. In order to maintain his credibility, it was decided that Garbo, or one of his fictional agents, should forewarn the Germans of the timing and some details of the actual invasion of Normandy, although sending it too late for them to take effective action. Special arrangements were made with the German radio operators to be listening to Garbo through the night of 5th and June 6, 1944, using the story that a subagent was about to arrive with important information. However, when the call was made at 3 a.m., no reply was received from the German operators until 8 a.m. This enabled Garbo to add more, genuine but now out-of-date, operational details to the message when finally received, and thus increase his standing with the Germans. Garbo told his German contacts that he was disgusted that his first message was missed, saying that he could not accept excuses or negligence. Were it not for his ideals, he would abandon the work. On June 9, 3 days after D-Day, Arabelle sent a message to German intelligence that was passed to Adolf Hitler and the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, or OKW, the German High Command. Arabelle said that he had conferred with his top agents and developed an order of battle showing 75 divisions in Britain. In reality, there were only about 50. Part of the Fortitude Plan was to convince the Germans that a fictitious formation, the 1st U.S. Army Group, comprising 11 divisions, or 150,000 men, commanded by the famous General George Patton, was stationed in southeast Britain. The deception was supported by fake planes, inflatable tanks, and vans traveling about the area transmitting bogus radio chatter. Garbo's message pointed out that units from this formation had not participated in the invasion, and therefore the first landing should be considered a diversion. A German message to Madrid sent 2 days later said, "All reports received in the last week from Arabelle undertaking have been confirmed without exception and are to be described as especially valuable." A post-war examination of German records found that, during Operation Fortitude, no fewer than 62 of Pujol's reports were included in German High Command intelligence summaries. The German High Command accepted Garbo's reports so completely that they kept 2 armored divisions and 19 infantry divisions in the Pas-de-Calais waiting for a second invasion through July and August 1944. The German commander-in-chief in the West, Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, refused to allow General Erwin Rommel to move these divisions to Normandy. In late June, Garbo was instructed by the Germans to report on the falling of V-1 flying bombs. Finding no way of giving false information without arousing suspicion, and being unwilling to give correct information, Harris arranged for Garbo to be arrested. He returned to duty a few days later, now having a need to avoid London, and forwarded an official letter of apology from the Home Secretary for his unlawful detention. The Germans paid Pujol $340,000 over the course of the war to support his network of agents, which at one point totaled 27 fabricated characters. As Arabelle, he was awarded the Iron Cross Second Class on July 29, 1944, for his services to the German war effort. The award was normally reserved for frontline fighting men and required Hitler's personal authorization. The Iron Cross was presented via radio. As Garbo, he received the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire from King George VI on November 25, 1944. The Nazis never realized they had been fooled, and thus Pujol, along with Eddie Chapman, another double agent, earned the distinction of being one of the few to receive decorations from both sides during World War II. After the Second World War, Pujol feared reprisals from surviving Nazis. With the help of the British Secret Service, Pujol traveled to Angola and faked his death from malaria in 1949. He then moved to Lagunas, Venezuela, where he lived in relative anonymity running a bookstore and gift shop. Pujol divorced his first wife and married Carmen Cilia, with whom he had 2 sons, Carlos Miguel and Joan Carlos, and a daughter who died in 1975 at the age of 20. By 1984, Pujol had moved to his son Carlos Miguel's house in La Trinidad, Caracas. In 1971, the British politician Rupert Allison, writing under the pen name Nigel West, became interested in Garbo. Pujol and Allison finally met in New Orleans on May 20, 1984. They collaborated on his autobiography Operation Garbo, published in 1985. At Allison's urging, Pujol traveled to London and was received by Prince Philip at Buckingham Palace, in an unusually long audience. On the 40th anniversary of D-Day, June 6, 1984, Pujol traveled to Normandy to tour the beaches and pay his respects to the dead. Pujol died in Caracas in 1988 and is buried in Coroni, a town inside Henri Pittier National Park by the Caribbean Sea. Did you already know this story? In your opinion, what was the secret of Juan Pujol's success? If you have enjoyed watching it, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Share it with your friends. This is very important for the growth of the channel and to produce more videos about world military history. See you in the next video. Goodbye.